The massive space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a glowing city. Ships from 12 different alien worlds docked at its ports, their crews hurrying through the corridors with worried faces. Something big was happening, and everyone knew it. In the main council chamber, beings that looked nothing like each other sat around a circular table. The Zephyrians appeared like walking crystals that hummed when they spoke. The Karathi stood tall with 4 arms and scales that changed color with their emotions. The Serenity Coalition members had pale blue skin and moved like they were underwater. All of them had come here for one reason. They needed to talk about humans. Council leader Vex High rose from his seat. His species, the Altarians, looked almost human except for their gray skin and black eyes. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "We are here because of the growing threat from the human species," he said. "For too long, we have watched them from afar. What we have seen troubles us all." A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showed planet Earth, blue and green, and beautiful. And the image changed to show human cities, human ships, human soldiers marching in formation. "They fight each other constantly," said Zikmer, a Zephyrian whose crystal body glowed red with anger. "Their planet is covered in weapons. They solve problems with violence first, then think about it later." The hologram shifted again. Now it showed human soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save their friends. It showed humans running into burning buildings to rescue strangers. It showed humans choosing to die rather than abandon their wounded. "They are unpredictable," added General Vorthok of the Karathi military. His scales had turned dark purple, which meant he was afraid. "They do things that make no sense. They sacrifice themselves for others who are not even family, refuse to surrender even when they cannot win." Ambassador Cathera of the Serenity Coalition stood up slowly. She was old, even by her people's standards, and her voice was soft and careful. "Perhaps we should try to understand them better," she said. "Maybe there is wisdom in their ways that we do not see." The other council members turned to look at her. Some made sounds that meant disagreement in their languages. "Wisdom?" Vexai's voice grew louder. "They have had nuclear weapons for less than 100 years, and they have almost destroyed themselves 3 times. They poison their own planet for profit. They cannot even agree on simple things like what to call their star. But they also create beautiful art," Kethera said. "They write music that moves the heart, explore dangerous places just to see what is there. They ask questions that we would never think to ask." "That is exactly the problem," said Dr. Malthine, the head scientist from the Hegemony Worlds. "They ask too many questions. They want to know how everything works. They take things apart and put them back together in new ways. If we let them into galactic society, they will change everything." The council chamber grew quiet. Everyone was thinking about what that meant. "Change is not always bad," Kethera said quietly. "Change is chaos," Vexai replied. "We have spent thousands of years building a peaceful galaxy. We solve problems by talking, not fighting. We make decisions carefully, after thinking about them for a long time. We share resources fairly. We do not take what belongs to others." He pointed at the hologram, which now showed human ships flying between planets in their solar system. "Humans do not think like us. They act on emotion. They make quick decisions without considering all the consequences. They compete with each other instead of cooperating. If we let them spread across the galaxy, they will bring their chaos with them." "What do you propose we do?" asked Neloth, a representative from the collective worlds. Vexai looked around the room at all the other beings. His black eyes reflected the light from the hologram. "We quarantine them," he said. "We build barriers around their solar system that they cannot break. We cut off all contact with them. We'll let them stay in their own space and leave the rest." Of the galaxy alone, the room exploded with voices in dozens of different languages. Some council members agreed loudly. Others argued against the idea. The debate went on for hours. In the end, they voted. 10 species agreed with the quarantine. Only the Serenity Coalition voted against it. The Wanderer clans did not vote at all, which meant they did not care either way. "It is decided," Vexai announced. "The human species will be contained within their home system. All hyperspace routes to Sol will be sealed using quantum barrier technology. No ships will enter or leave.
Oh.
No communications will be allowed. The quarantine will remain in place until the humans prove they are ready to join civilized society. And how will they prove that if we do not talk to them? Kethra asked. When they stop fighting each other, Vexhai said. When they learn to share instead of compete. When they think before they act. When they become like us. 3 days later, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Starbound. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. His ship had been exploring the outer edges of the solar system for 6 months. Looking for signs of other life, they had found something much more than they expected. Captain, we're receiving a transmission, said Amy Chen, his communications officer. She was young and smart, and she looked worried. It's coming from outside our solar system. Put it on screen, Morrison said. A figure appeared on the main display. It looked almost human, but its skin was gray, and its eyes were completely black. Morrison had never seen anything like it before. I am Council Leader Vexhai of the Galactic Council, the figure said. I am speaking to all humans in the Sol system. You have been judged too dangerous to join galactic civilization. Your system is now under quarantine. You're not attempt to leave your star system. You're not attempt to contact other worlds. This isolation will continue until you learn to live in peace. The transmission ended. The bridge of the Starbound was completely silent. Captain, said Lisa Hayes, the ship's engineer. She was staring at her instruments with shock. I'm reading massive energy. Signatures all around the edge of the solar system. Something is being built out there. What kind of something? Morrison asked. Barriers, she said. They're building walls in space, quantum barriers that will block all travel and communication. Carlos Rodriguez, the navigator, looked up from his station. Sir, we need to make a choice. We can try to get back to Earth now, or we'll be stuck out here when the barriers activate. Morrison looked at his crew. These people had trusted him to lead them into the unknown. Now they were facing something none of them had ever imagined. How long do we have? He asked. Maybe 6 hours? Hayes said. The barriers are already starting to form. Morrison made his decision quickly, the way humans always did. We stay out. Here, he said, someone needs to witness what happens next. Someone needs to remember that Earth tried to reach for the stars, and the stars said no. 6 hours later, the barriers activated. Starbound watched as walls of energy formed around the entire solar system. The walls glowed with strange light and hummed with power that made their instruments go crazy. Earth was now alone. Morrison sent one last message toward his home planet before the barriers completely blocked all communication. This is Captain Morrison of the Starbound. If anyone receives this, know that we are still out here. We will find a way home someday. When we do, we'll bring help. The message was sent into space, but no one on Earth ever received it. The barriers were already too strong in the council chamber on Nexus Prime. Vexhai watched the last readings from the Sol system. The quarantine was complete. The human problem was solved. It is done, he announced to the other council members. The galaxy is safe. Cathara sat quietly in her chair, watching the final energy readings fade to nothing. She had a bad feeling that they had just made a terrible mistake. But the decision was made, and there was no going back now. The galaxy settled into peace, and humans were forgotten. 50 years had passed since the quantum barriers trapped Earth in silence. The galaxy had changed in ways the council members thought were good. Wars between alien species had almost stopped. Trade disputes were solved with long meetings instead of battles. Every major decision took months of careful discussion before anyone acted. On Nexus Prime, the space station had grown 3 times bigger. Millions of beings from across the galaxy now lived there in perfect harmony. The corridors were quiet and peaceful. Everyone spoke in soft voices and moved slowly, thinking about each step before they took it. Council Leader Vexhai, now much older, walked through the gardens on level 47. The plants here came from hundreds of different worlds, but they all grew together without fighting for space or light. This was what he had wanted for the whole galaxy: order, peace, control. Quarterly reports show crime is down by 90%, his aide told him. Resource conflicts have dropped to almost nothing. The meditation centers are full every day. Vexai nodded. The humans would have ruined all of this, he said. Their chaos would have spread like a disease. But not everyone had forgotten. About Earth, far from the busy trade routes, hidden in an asteroid field that most ships avoided, a small research station drifted in space. It looked like a piece of space junk from the outside, but inside, important work was happening. Dr. Alex Stone had spent most of his life studying the barriers around Sol System. He was old now, with gray hair and tired eyes, but his mind was still sharp. His team was small, but dedicated. They all shared the same dream of going home someday. The energy readings are changing again, said Dr. Janet Webb, looking at her instruments. She was younger than Stone, but she had been working on this problem for 20 years. The barriers are getting stronger, but they're also getting more complex. Ryan Clark, their computer expert, looked up from his work. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures. The barriers aren't just keeping things out anymore. They're keeping information from getting through, too. We can't see what's happening inside the Sol System at all. Stone walked over to the main display. It showed the solar system as a blank space surrounded by swirling energy walls. For 50 years, they had watched those walls, looking for any sign of weakness. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Stone said quietly. Maybe Earth needed time to figure things out without the galaxy watching. Webb frowned. You think they're still alive in there? I know they are, Stone said. Humans don't give up that easily. He was right. Inside the barriers, Earth had not been sitting still. The first 10 years after the quarantine had been the hardest. Panic, confusion, and fear had gripped the planet when people realized they were truly alone. Some countries tried to blame others for attracting alien attention. Some leaders wanted to build weapons to break the barriers. Some people just wanted to hide and hope the aliens would eventually leave them alone. But humans had always been good at one thing: adapting to impossible situations. President Helen Grant stood in the United Nations building, looking out at representatives. From every nation on Earth, the old blue and white UN flag had been replaced with a new one showing Earth surrounded by stars. It was the flag of the Terran Federation, the government that had finally united all of humanity. The Mars colonies are ahead of schedule, reported Admiral Susan Wright, the head of the new Space Defense Force. We now have permanent settlements on Mars, Europa, Titan, and 3 asteroid stations. Total population off-world is now over 2 million people. General Ben Carter, in charge of the Federation military, added his report. Our shipyards are producing 50 new vessels per month. The fleet now numbers over 8,000 ships of all sizes. We've reverse-engineered the alien monitoring probes that got caught inside the barriers before they activated. Dr. Tony Mills, the chief scientist, smiled as he gave his report. We've made breakthroughs in quantum physics that the old Earth never dreamed of. Our new ships can travel faster than anything we had before the quarantine. We've also developed new materials that are stronger and lighter than anything in our old databases. President Grant nodded. And our social progress? Crime rates have dropped to historic lows, said Dr. Linda Pierce, the social coordinator. When people have a common goal and plenty of work to do, they don't fight each other. Education levels are higher than ever. We've eliminated poverty and hunger on Earth. And all colonies? What about our preparations for when the barriers come down? Grant asked. Admiral Wright answered that question. Our deep space scouts have mapped every inch of the solar system. We've built hidden bases on the outer planets. If the aliens return with hostile intent, we'll be ready. But we're also prepared for peaceful contact. What the humans didn't know was that some of their preparations were being noticed. On the edge of the solar system, automated monitoring stations built by the Galactic Council kept watch. These machines had been recording data for 50 years, but most of it was ignored. The Council believed humans were probably fighting each other or had destroyed themselves completely. But a few people paid attention to the strange readings. Zickmer, the Zephyrian scientist, had become obsessed with the monitoring data. His crystal body had grown dim with age, but his mind was still sharp. He worked alone in a laboratory deep inside Nexus Prime, studying reports that everyone else ignored. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases, he muttered to himself. These readings suggest technology we've never seen before. He pulled up a display showing energy patterns detected near Jupiter. The readings showed ships, moving in formations that were too organized and too fast for the old human technology, the Council remembered. Possible, he whispered. They couldn't have advanced this much in just 50 years, but Zickmer was cautious. He had voted for the quarantine 50 years ago, and he didn't want to admit he might have been wrong. Instead of reporting his findings to the Council, he decided to investigate more. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was still alive, though much older now. His ship, the Starbound, had become famous among the independent traders and outcasts who lived on the edges of galactic society. His crew had changed over the years, but his mission remained the same: find a way home. "Captain, we're picking up some unusual transmissions," said his new communications officer, Pete Williams, a young man who had joined the crew 5 years ago. "They're coming from the direction of Sol System, but they're getting through the barriers somehow." Morrison, now with white hair and a beard, looked up from his captain's chair. "What kind of transmissions?" "Navigation data," Williams said. "Ship movements, fleet positions. It's like someone inside the barriers is trying to map everything outside." Lisa Hayes, still serving as chief engineer despite her age, checked her instruments. "The barriers have weak spots that come and go. Very small ones, but they might be enough for tight beam communications." Morrison made a decision that would change everything. Send a response. Use the old emergency codes from the Earth Space Navy. If there's anyone left who remembers those codes, they'll know we're still out here. The message was sent on a narrow beam toward the Sol System. It was simple: Starbound to Earth defense. We are still here. We remember home. On Earth, deep in the underground headquarters of the Terran Federation Defense Network, Admiral Patricia Ross received the message. She was young when the barriers went up, but she remembered the old codes from her history classes. "My God," she whispered, "there are still humans out there." She immediately called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. Within hours, the top leaders of human civilization were gathered in the secure meeting room. "This changes everything," President Grant said after hearing the report. "We thought we were completely alone." Dr. Lucas Brown, head of the physics department, had been working on barrier technology for decades. "I've always believed we could break through the barriers if we had to," he said. "But the energy release would be visible across half the galaxy. Everyone would know we're here." "Maybe it's time they knew," Admiral Ross said. "We've spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Our ships are ready. Our people are ready. And now we know we're not the only humans who want to rejoin the galaxy." "General." Carter leaned forward. "What about the Council? They quarantined us because they thought we were too dangerous. What makes us think they'll welcome us back?" "Maybe they will. Maybe they won't," Grant said. "But we can't stay prisoners forever. And from what our deep space sensors are picking up, it looks like the galaxy might need our help soon." The sensors had detected something troubling in the galactic core. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Ships or beings that seemed to consume everything in their path. The peaceful galaxy the Council had created might not be as safe as they thought. But the Council didn't know about these threats yet. They were too busy enjoying their perfect, quiet civilization to pay attention to the dangers gathering in the dark spaces between stars. The stage was set for humanity's return, whether the galaxy was ready or not. The emergency alarm screamed through every corridor of Nexus Prime. Red lights flashed as beings from dozens of species ran toward their emergency stations. Something terrible was happening in the Sagittarius arm of the galaxy, and no one knew what to do about it. In the main council chamber, holographic displays showed the destruction. Entire star systems were simply gone. Not destroyed by war or natural disaster, but completely missing. Where once there had been stars, planets, and space stations, now there was only empty darkness. Council leader Vexhai stood before the emergency assembly, his gray face pale with shock. "More systems have vanished in the past week," he announced. "The Helix colonies, the bright star trading posts, And the research station at Kepler 442? Over 2 billion beings are missing. The chamber filled with worried voices in dozens of languages. Representatives demanded answers that no one had. What could cause entire star systems to disappear? Asked Neloth from the Collective Worlds. Dr. Malthine, the head scientist, stepped forward. His forearms shook as he spoke. Our long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving through that region. These signatures don't match anything in our databases. They seem to be consuming everything they encounter. Consuming how? Vexi demanded. We don't know, Malthine admitted. The energy readings suggest they're converting matter and energy into something else, something we don't understand. Ambassador Kethera, now very old but still sharp, raised her voice above the others. Have we tried to communicate with these beings? We've sent diplomatic messages in over 300 languages, replied the communications chief. There's been no response. General Vorthok, of the Korthi military, slammed his forefist on the table. His scales had turned deep red with anger and fear. We should attack immediately. Send the full fleet. Attack what? Cathara asked. We don't even know what we're dealing with. We know they're destroying everything in their path, Vorthok replied. That's enough for me. Vexi held up his hand for silence. We will proceed carefully. Form a committee to study these beings. Prepare diplomatic contact protocols. And ready our defensive fleets, just in case. Cathera shook her head. A committee while billions die? This is exactly why she stopped herself before saying more. Why? What? Vexi asked coldly. Nothing, Cathara said. But she was thinking about humans and their quick decisions. Their willingness to act fast when lives were in danger. 3 months passed while the committee studied and debated. 3 months while the mysterious entities consumed system after system. The council called them the Void Hunters because they seemed to hunt through space, leaving only emptiness behind. During those 3 months, Captain Jake Morrison received some very interesting visitors. Morrison was sitting in a cantina on the trading station Freeport when a hooded figure approached his table. The cantina was full of beings that the Galactic Council didn't approve of. Pirates, smugglers, and others who lived outside the law. Captain Morrison, the figure asked. I'm Captain Ellen Gray. I represent some people who are very interested in meeting you. Morrison looked at her carefully. She was human, but she wore the uniform of the Terran Federation Space Navy. I thought all humans were trapped inside the Sol system, he said. Gray smiled. Most of us are. But some of us have been working on that problem for 50 years. She sat down and pulled out a small device, projected a hologram of a sleek, advanced starship. This is the Freedom's Dawn, one of our new scout ships. We've been probing the barriers for months, looking for weaknesses. You found some? Morrison asked. We found more than that, Gray said. We found a way to talk through them. And we've been listening to galactic communications. We know about the Void Hunters. Morrison leaned forward. What do you know about them? More than the Council does, Gray replied. Our scientists have been studying the energy signatures. We think we know what they are and how to fight them. Before Morrison could ask more questions, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Ships were moving in the distance, and they weren't following normal traffic patterns.
Alpha Patrol,
Gray said, looking at her instruments.
out.
They're doing random searches. Looking for anyone who might have information about the Void Hunters, Morrison made a quick decision. My ship is docked at Bay 12. If you want to continue this conversation somewhere safe, you're welcome aboard. An hour later, Gray was standing on the bridge of the Starbound with Morrison and his crew. She looked around at the old but well-maintained equipment. You've done good work keeping her running, she said. But wait until you see what we've built. Back home, she activated a communication device that looked far more advanced than anything Morrison had seen. The hologram that appeared showed a massive space dock with ships that were sleek, fast, and obviously powerful. Admiral Patricia Ross, commander of the Terran Defense Network, the hologram said. Captain Morrison, it's good to finally meet. You, Morrison saluted. Admiral, what's the situation? We've been monitoring the Void Hunter attacks, Ross replied. Our analysis suggests they're not just destroying matter and energy. They're feeding on it. It's converting it into something that makes them stronger. The Council doesn't know that, Morrison said. The Council has been debating what to do for 3 months while billions of beings die, Ross said grimly. They're afraid to act without perfect information. They want to study the problem until they understand every detail. Morrison nodded. That sounds like them. What do you want from me? We want you to deliver a message to the Council, Ross said. Tell them that Earth is willing to help. Tell them we have technology and tactics that might work against the Void. Hunters. They quarantined us because they thought we were too dangerous, Morrison pointed out. Maybe dangerous is exactly what the galaxy needs right now, Ross replied. Morrison looked at his crew. They had all lived outside the barriers for 50 years, watching their home world from a distance. Now, they had a chance to help bring humanity back into galactic civilization. What's the plan? He asked. Gray smiled. We're going to give the Council a demonstration they'll never forget. 2 days later, Morrison's ship arrived at Nexus Prime, requesting an emergency meeting with the Council. The station's security was tight because of the Void Hunter crisis. But Morrison still had diplomatic credentials from before the quarantine. The Council assembled quickly. They were curious about why a human ship had appeared after 50 years of silence. Morrison stood before the alien representatives, feeling small in the huge chamber. But he had faced worse odds before. Honored Council members, he began, I bring a message from Earth. Oh. Vex's black eyes grew wide. Earth. But the barriers are still in place, Morrison said. But my people have found ways to communicate. Through them, they know about the Void Hunters, and they want to help. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Some council members demanded to know how humans could possibly help. Others wanted to know how they had learned about the crisis. Humans caused this problem. Out! Shouted one representative. Their chaos must have attracted these creatures. Morrison kept his voice calm. The Void Hunters have been dormant for millions of years. They existed long before humans reached space. This isn't our fault. Then how could you possibly help? Us, Vexi demanded. Morrison activated a holographic projector. The display showed energy readings and tactical analysis that was far more detailed than anything the Council had produced. Because we've been studying them, Morrison said. We think we know their weaknesses. Dr. Malthine examined the data with growing amazement. These readings? How did you obtain such detailed information? Human deep space sensors, Morrison replied. We've been watching the galaxy for 50 years. We saw the Void Hunters coming. Before they started attacking? Why didn't you warn us? Cathara asked. Morrison smiled sadly. We tried. But the barriers block all our communications. Until now. Vexi stood up slowly. What do the humans propose? A joint operation, Morrison said. Human ships and tactics, supported by Council resources. We have new technology and new ways of fighting. We'll need your help to reach the Void Hunters before they consume any more systems. And if we refuse? Vorthok asked. Morrison looked around the chamber at all the worried faces. Then you'll keep doing what you've been doing, studying and debating while civilizations die. And eventually the Void Hunters will reach this station. The Council members looked at each other nervously. Some whispered in their alien languages. Finally, Vexi spoke again. What guarantees do we have that humans won't use this crisis to spread their chaos throughout the galaxy? You don't, Morrison said honestly. But you have my word that we only want to help save lives, the same as you. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. In the end, desperation won over fear. The Council voted to allow limited human involvement in the fight against the Void Hunters. But they had no idea what they had just unleashed. The first sign that something had changed came from the automated monitoring stations around Sol System. For 50 years, these machines had sent the same boring reports to the Council. Energy levels normal, no ship movement detected, barriers holding steady. Now the reports were very different. Technician Yilmoth stared at his screen in disbelief. He was a young hegemony worker who had the night shift at the monitoring center. Nobody important ever looked at these reports anymore. This can't be right, he muttered, checking his instruments again. Energy levels are off the charts. The quantum barriers around Earth's solar system were shaking. Massive power surges rippled through them like waves on water. Something inside was pushing against the walls, testing them, looking for weak points. Yilmoth called his supervisor, but she told him to run more tests. It's probably just equipment failure, she said. Those stations are 50 years old. But the readings kept getting stronger. 3 hours later, first barrier collapsed. It happened near the edge of the solar system, where Pluto's orbit used to be. The quantum wall simply exploded outward in a burst of energy that lit up space for millions of miles. Then something came through the gap. It was a ship, but unlike anything in the Council's databases, sleek and dark, it moved through space like a hunting shark. Behind it came another ship, then another. Soon there were hundreds of them. Pouring through the broken barrier like water through a dam, Captain Danny Wright stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser. New Earth and watched as more human ships emerged from hyperspace. His vessel was one of the largest in the Terran Federation fleet, over a mile long and armed with weapons the Council had never seen. "All ships report ready, Captain," said his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kelly Moore. "The fleet is at full strength." Nodded. Around him, the command crew worked with quiet efficiency. These people had trained their whole lives for this moment. They were the children and grandchildren of those who remembered the quarantine. They had grown up knowing that someday humanity would return to the galaxy. "Signal the Admiral, right?" Ordered. "Tell her the Liberation Fleet is in position." Admiral Patricia Ross received the message aboard her flagship, the massive dreadnought Terra Nova. The ship was 2 miles long and carried enough firepower to level a small moon. But Ross hoped they wouldn't need to use it. "Open a channel 2. All Council frequencies," she ordered. On Nexus Prime, emergency alarms were blaring again. But this time it wasn't because of the Void Hunters. Council members ran through the corridors as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "Hundreds of unknown ships have appeared near the former quarantine zone. They're spreading out across local space. Sir, they're not attacking, but they're taking defensive positions around our colonies." Vex High stood in the main command center watching the tactical displays with growing horror. Red dots representing human ships were appearing on star charts. Throughout Council space, they moved with purpose and coordination that the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Still counting, sir," replied the tactical officer. "At least 3,000 so far, possibly more." 3,000? Vexai couldn't believe it. How did they build 3,000 ships while trapped behind barriers? Then, the communication came in. Admiral Ross appeared on every screen in the command center. She was a tall woman with gray hair and steel blue eyes. Her uniform was crisp and military, but her expression was calm. "This is Admiral Patricia Ross of the Terran Federation Fleet," she said. "We have monitored your situation with the Void Hunters. We're here to help, whether you want it or not." The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the screens. "While you've been debating what to do," Ross continued, 17 more star systems have been consumed. Billions of beings are dead. Your careful, peaceful approach isn't working. So we're going to try something different." Vexai found his voice. "You have no authority here." The quarantine is over," Ross interrupted. "We broke it, and right now, that's the least of your problems." She gestured, and the display changed to show tactical information about the Void Hunters. The data was far more detailed than anything the Council had. "The entities you call Void Hunters are actually machines," Ross explained. "Ancient weapons left over from a war that happened millions of years ago. They're programmed to consume ordered civilizations and convert them into energy." Dr. Malthine, who was watching from the Council chamber, gasped. "Ordered civilizations?" "That's right," Ross said. "The more organized and peaceful a civilization is, the easier it is for them to feed. Your perfect galactic harmony has made you the ideal prey." In the command center, General Vorthok snarled with anger. "You're lying. You just want to justify. You're chaos." Ross smiled coldly. "Watch and learn." What happened next would be remembered as the most shocking day in galactic history. Human ships began appearing around Council worlds. But they didn't attack. Instead, they took defensive positions and began coordinating with local defense forces. At the trading world of New Harmony, Captain Josh Martin's cruiser Ranger's Pride moved into orbit and immediately began scanning for Void Hunter infiltration signatures. "This is Captain Martin to New Harmony Defense Command," he broadcast. "We're reading energy patterns that suggest Void Hunter scout units in your outer system. Recommend immediate evacuation of stations 7 through 12. The local commander was confused. "How do you know this? Our sensors show nothing unusual." "Because your sensors are designed to detect normal threats," Martin replied. "The Void Hunters use different technology. Trust me, you need to move those people now." While the council argued about what to do, human ships spread across their territory. Each one took position to defend civilian populations and trade routes. They didn't ask permission. They just acted. Captain Ellen Gray, who had met with Morrison days earlier, commanded a fast attack group near the frontier worlds. Her ships were smaller than the heavy cruisers, but they moved like lightning through space. Void Hunter energy. "Signature detected at Kepler Station," her sensor officer reported. "All ships. Attack formation," Gray ordered. "Remember, hit-and-run tactics. Don't let them lock onto us." The human ships dove into the attack like fighters taking on a bomber. They fired weapons that disrupted Void Hunter energy patterns, then jumped away before the enemy could respond. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and completely effective. On Nexus Prime, the Council watched the battle reports with amazement. The humans were winning fights that Council fleets had lost badly. "How are they doing this?" Orthoc demanded. "Captain?" Morrison, who had remained on the station as Earth's representative, answered. "Because we understand something you don't. Sometimes the best way to win is to be unpredictable." "That's just chaos," Vexai protested. "Yes," Morrison agreed. "And chaos is exactly what the Void Hunters can't handle." He activated his own display, showing human tactical doctrine. "The Void Hunters are programmed to fight ordered civilizations. They expect their enemies to follow logical patterns. Large fleets, organized formations, careful strategies." "What's wrong with that?" Dr. Malthine asked. "Nothing if you're fighting." "Normal enemies," Morrison replied. "The Void Hunters use those patterns to predict your moves. They can calculate where your ships will be and what they'll do next." He pointed to the battle reports. "Our ships don't follow those patterns. We attack from unexpected directions, use tactics that seem to make no sense. We sacrifice tactical advantage for strategic surprise." "That's insane," Vorthok said. "That's human," Morrison corrected. Meanwhile, more human ships were arriving every hour. The massive Dreadnought-class ships like Destiny's Call and Iron Will took positions near major population centers. Their crews included people like Commander Lisa Torres, who had grown up hearing stories about the galaxy beyond the barriers. "Beautiful," she said, looking at the alien cities through her ship's viewports. "I always wondered what it would look like out here." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Davis, was less impressed. "These people have been living in paradise while we were stuck in our solar system. Now they expect us to save them." "Maybe," Torres said. "But that's what we do. We save people who need saving." The truth was that many humans were angry about the quarantine. 50 years of isolation had cost them opportunities, relationships, and dreams of exploring the galaxy. But they had come anyway, because that's what humans did when innocent people were in danger. As reports flooded in from across Council space, it became clear that the human intervention was working. Void Hunter attacks were being stopped. Civilian evacuations were proceeding smoothly. For the first time in months, no new star systems had been consumed. But the biggest test was still coming. Admiral Ross called another conference with the Council. Leaders this time, her message was different. "We've bought you time," she said, "but this is just the beginning. The main Void Hunter force is still at the galactic core, and it's growing stronger every day. If we're going to stop them permanently, we need to attack their source." "A direct assault on the galactic core?" Bexhai looked horrified. "That's suicide," maybe Ross admitted. "But it's the only way to end this threat, and we can't do it alone. We need your ships, your resources, and your people. Why should we trust you?" Vorthok demanded. The combined fleet that gathered at the edge of the galactic core was the largest military force in recorded history. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside alien cruisers. Council ships that had never seen real combat moved in formation with human vessels that had been built for war. Admiral Patricia Ross stood on the bridge of her flagship Terra Nova, watching the final preparations. Through the viewports, she could see thousands of ships stretching into the distance. Human crews worked side by side with alien engineers, sharing technology and tactics that neither side had imagined before. Final count is 8,400 ships, reported her tactical officer, Commander Nick Turner. Human forces make up about 60%. The rest are council volunteers. Ross nodded. Any word from the advanced scouts? Captain Tom Nelson reports that the main Void Hunter entity is definitely at the galactic core, Turner replied. Admiral, bigger than anything we've seen before, and it's still growing. The advanced scouts had been watching the core for weeks. What they found there was terrifying. The largest Void Hunter entity had planted itself at the very center of the galaxy, feeding on the energy of the black hole itself. It was using that power to grow larger and to create smaller Hunter units that spread out to consume star systems. How long until we reach the target? Ross asked. 6 hours at current speed, came the reply. Ross walked to the communication station. Open a channel to all ships. When the channel was open, she spoke to the largest fleet in galactic history. This is Admiral Ross. In 6 hours, we will face an enemy that has existed since before any of our civilizations began. It has consumed countless worlds and ended billions of lives. Today, we end its reign of terror. She paused, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. Some of you have questioned whether humans and the council species can work together. Some have wondered if our different ways of thinking will cause problems. Today, you'll see that our differences are our strength. On the council command ship Eternal Peace, General Vorthok listened to the human admiral with mixed feelings. His scales showed the purple color of uncertainty. Beside him, Ambassador Cathara watched the tactical displays with amazement. Never imagined I would see this day, she said quietly. Humans and council species fighting side by side? Don't celebrate yet, Vorthok replied. We still have to survive this battle. Captain Steve Johnson commanded the human battleship Liberty Stand, one of the most powerful ships in the fleet. His crew had trained for years for this moment. They knew that everything depended on the next few hours. Enemy contact in 1 hour, his sensor officer reported. Multiple Void Hunter units moving to intercept. Johnson smiled grimly. All hands, prepare for combat. Remember, these things expect us to fight like the Council does. Show them what humans can do. The first engagement began exactly as Ross had planned. The Void Hunters sent their smaller units forward in perfect formation, expecting the Allied fleet to respond with careful, organized tactics. Instead, the human ships scattered in all directions. To the Council commanders, it looked like complete chaos. Human ships seemed to be flying randomly through space, firing at targets that made no sense, taking risks that seemed suicidal. But there was a pattern to the madness. Captain Danny Wright's cruiser New Earth dove straight at a massive Void Hunter, firing everything it had. The alien entity tried to calculate where the ship would go next, but Wright suddenly reversed course and attacked from behind. The Void Hunter couldn't adapt fast enough. Direct hit, Wright's gunner shouted. Enemy shields are down 30%. Ow. Captain Ellen Gray led a group of fast attack ships in what looked like a completely random pattern. Her ships would appear, fire a few shots, then disappear again. The Void Hunters tried to target them, but they were never where the entities expected them to be. It's working, Gray reported over the communication network. They can't lock on to us. The Council ships, following human coordination, began to understand the strategy. Instead of the careful, planned attacks they were used to, they started making quick strikes and rapid retreats. It felt wrong to them, but they could see it was working. Dr. Samuel Davis, working from a research ship at the back of the fleet, watched the battle data with excitement. The Void Hunters are having trouble adapting, he reported to Admiral Ross. Their programming is designed to fight organized enemies. Our chaotic tactics are confusing their battle computers. But the real test came when they reached the galactic core. The main Void Hunter entity was enormous. It stretched for thousands of miles, feeding on the black hole's energy and converting it into raw power. Smaller hunter units swarmed around, it like insects protecting their nest. "My God," whispered Captain Morrison, who was observing from the command ship. "It's the size of a small moon." Ross studied the massive entity through her tactical displays. "All ships begin the final attack. Remember the plan? Hit them with everything we have, but don't follow any predictable patterns." What happened next would be remembered as the most chaotic battle in galactic history. Human ships attacked from every direction at once. Some dove straight at the main entity. Others circled around to hit it from behind. A few even used the black hole's gravity to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. Lieutenant Colonel Kelly Moore led a desperate assault directly into the entity's core. Her Marines wore experimental armor and carried weapons that could disrupt Void Hunter energy patterns. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. "Remember?" she told her team as their transport ship flew into the heart of the enemy. "We're not trying to survive this. We're trying to give everyone else a chance to win." Moore's ship crashed deep inside the Void Hunter entity. Her Marines fought their way through alien corridors that seemed to shift and change around them. Many of them died, but they managed to plant explosive charges in the creature's central processing core. "Charges set," Moore reported over the radio. 30 seconds to detonation. The explosion tore through the entity's core systems, but it wasn't enough to destroy something so massive. It confused the creature's ability to coordinate its defenses. Captain Tom Nelson, piloting the experimental ship Phoenix, took advantage of the confusion. His ship was equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had developed. He flew directly at the entity's main power source, dodging defensive fire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "This is insane," his co-pilot shouted. "That's the idea," Nelson replied. He fired everything the Phoenix had directly into the entity's power core. The weapons were designed to disrupt the quantum processes that the Void Hunters used to convert matter into energy. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire entity began to shake. Commander Rachel Torres, coordinating the bombing run from her command ship, watched as the massive creature started to collapse in on itself. "It's working. The entity is destabilizing." The destruction of the main Void Hunter entity triggered a chain reaction that spread across the galaxy. All the smaller entities that had been created from its energy suddenly lost their connection to their source. Without that connection, they began to shut down one by one. Admiral Ross watched the tactical displays as red dots representing Void Hunter units began disappearing from star charts across the galaxy. "All units, report status," she ordered. The reports came in from across Council space. Void Hunter attacks had stopped everywhere. The entities were powering down, becoming nothing more than lifeless metal floating in space. "It's over," Ross announced to the fleet. "The Void Hunter threat has been eliminated." The celebration that followed lasted for days. Human and alien crews worked together to rescue survivors from damaged ships. They shared food, stories, and hope for the future. On Nexus Prime, the formal ceremony took place a week later. The quantum barriers around Sol System were officially dismantled in front of representatives from every species in the galaxy. Council leader Vex High, looking much older than his years, stood before the assembly. 50 years ago, this council made a decision based on fear, he said. "We were afraid of human unpredictability. We thought chaos was dangerous." He looked at Admiral Ross, who stood with the other human representatives. "We were wrong," he continued. "We confused order with safety and peace with strength. The humans showed us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the courage to embrace the unknown." Ambassador Cathera, now the oldest member of the council, stood to speak. "The quarantine was my greatest regret," she said. "Should have fought harder against it. But today, I'm proud to welcome humanity back to the galactic community." Ross stepped forward. "Thank you," she said simply. "But we're not here to replace your way of doing things. We're here to add to them. You have wisdom and patience that we need. We have energy and innovation that you need." She gestured to the mixed crews that filled the ceremony hall. Together, we can explore places and discover things that neither of us could find alone. You wanted peace and order, want freedom and growth. Maybe together we can have all of it. The new age began immediately. Human scientists worked with alien researchers to develop technology that neither could have imagined alone.